Hello, this is Christian Klien, and you listen to F1 Weekly.
There are fewer than 30 men in the world qualified to drive Formula One. A mere half dozen, perhaps, to win. At this moment, I'm inclined to think you're not one of them.
No, you want to. Keep up the good work, Stephen, and there you have it. There you go.
Hello, this is Desiree for F1weekly.com. I'm your in-depth correspondent.
Let's go with the qualifying, Steve.
Welcome to F1weekly.com. My name is Clark Rogers. I'm the host of the program. I'll be joined by Nasser Hamid, my co-host. This is podcast number 824, March 16th, 2020. Nasser?
Thank you, sir. Greetings and no racing regards. Now we know what F in F1 stands for. Back to Mr. Rogers, the A++ of podcasting.
Thank you, Nasser. On today's program, no racing for a long time. No travel for a long time. Ferrari suspends production. So, to break up all this fun that we are having, F1 Weekly is bringing you an interview from the past. Black Jack himself, Mr. Jack Brabham, Formula One world champion. This interview took place in August of 2006. And the funny thing about the interview, of course, is Jack is deaf, doesn't understand any of our questions, but has such great canned answers that we just go with the flow and have a great time. Remember those days, Nas? Welcome to the studio. How are you?
Thank you very much, sir. It was a great honor to meet Jack Brabham that day. And we really, for me, it's one of my high points of my life. You know, it's interesting. I meet him there, and it was at the same track about 20 years earlier when I met Herman Lang. This is the guy who used to drive for Adolph's Grand Prix operation back in the day. So I'm glad you were able to dig up from the archives, and thank you for putting this up. But man, what an exciting season opener we had. Long before the teams arrived at Melbourne International Airport and their respective palatial rooms at the local Motel 6, or maybe it was Super 8, we were talking about what a historic season we are in for. Now the season, or at least some of it, may be history itself. From Corona to Heineken, the witch's brew is not the taste we were looking for this past weekend. I feel very bad for all those who planned and paid for the trip to Melbourne. I am sure a lot of people in Australia and from overseas saved time and money to attend the season opener, only to be told 10 minutes before the gates were to be opened that they will not be allowed in. Do you remember the feeling we had in 2005 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Senor?
Yes, that fuzzy feeling in your stomach.
This whole affair was handled very poorly. I am no medical expert, but question I have is, why were the team's personnel not tested for coronavirus before they boarded the big old jetliner that took them so far away? Did they catch the virus 30,000 feet in the air? I don't know. And most important, with China already postponed and Bahrain behind closed doors, at that time at least, why did they not do this race as a no-spectator event to start with? Your thoughts on this, sir?
Yes, there was confusion, and apparently the race without spectators left such a bad taste in everybody's mouth that other formulas were talking the same kind of game, and apparently that is not going to happen. Even for IndyCar, which canceled the St. Petersburg race, they were talking about racing without spectators, and I understand that scenario because you have a season, you have a points system, and you want everybody to be treated fairly so each driver has a chance to compete in the championship. So everybody is not going to have any racing, or should I say, there won't be any racing without an audience, without spectators, which I think is good. But on the other hand, you have to admit, knowing that everybody is going to be home, the TV audience is going to be unbelievably huge if we can get racing started, even if it's without spectators. I think that's a very important thing to follow up on. We've got to consider it for the safety of the people. But yet, on the other hand, let me put it this way, and I'm just going to announce this right now. They've just announced for the county that I live in that I have to shelter in place. This came out about 2 hours ago. I am to stay home. I am only to go out of the palatial F1 studios to get food and stuff to sustain my life, like toilet paper and food. So there you have it, Nas. I'm confined to quarters.
Yes, sir. And this whole Australian Grand Prix, Shamazel started with one members of McLaren. I believe he tested positive, and then McLaren right away said, we're going to pull out. And then, Kaka hit the ceiling. Andrew Benson of BBC was the first to report, based on info he received from two higher-ups in F1, that the race will not go ahead. Then there were reports the race will go on. Then we heard race will be on, but no spectators. And I started jumping on Australian newspapers online, and it was interesting. Yes, it's happening. No, it's happening. Yes, it's happening with no spectators. It was really, really very confusing. An online petition to cancel the race amid rising fears about the coronavirus had already garnered 11,000 signatures. And I understand somebody in Sydney also did the skywriting, with the smoke or whatever, to stop Formula One. And finally, FIA, F1 and the Australian Grand Prix Corporation personnel, higher-ups, finally sang our favorite song. And you know what that song is?
You mean my favorite song?
Si, senor. You need to do your rendition of I'm Sorry, please.
I'm sorry, so sorry.
Thank you. In the press conference announcing the cancellation, the powers that be kept using the term situation is very fluid. But the show treated the fans, especially at the track, like squid. Chase Carey was not excited when a journalist reminded him of Lewis's comment, "Cash is king." Very, very disappointing, but as you said, better safe than sorry. One can only hope things get better. The McLaren team member who tested positive for COVID-19 is now reported to be free of the virus. Renault, your favorite team, has confirmed its Formula One race crew that attended the Australian Grand Prix are currently undergoing a self-isolation period as a precaution due to the coronavirus pandemic. So if you are confined to your home, you might as well put on a Renault jersey that you have, especially the Mild 7, and feel that you work in Formula One as a professional.
Well, that's a very good idea. I will be picking up my shirt at the cleaners. Yes, going to the cleaners is allowed under this martial law.
Good thing is ticket holders will be refunded, something that won't be happening for the people who bought tickets to St. Petersburg IndyCar season opener. My thanks to our mate in Melbourne, Mr. Bentley, also known as the original JB, for sharing photos of what he called big names, two of our favorites, Fisico and the two-legged Robinho. This is not the first time a season opener has been cancelled. I'm sure most of our listeners and you will remember the 2011 Bahrain Grand Prix was cancelled as the natives were getting restless. Big question now is, where do we go from here? Definitely not Bahrain, and now the inaugural Vietnam Grand Prix is also Pha. Talk now is Azerbaijan Grand Prix in June, maybe the season opener. What are we going to do now, Mr. Rogers?
Well, I said in the last podcast that this coronavirus was going to be a heap of trouble for Formula One, and boy, did I get that right. I mean, it's a disaster, and it's fun, and that's why we're going back to the Jack Brabham interview. We were so young, Nasser. Only so good looking, too.
Yes, sir. And what I've been doing now the whole past weekend, and even today, and actually I'm not making this up, before the start of this recording, I was watching the 1982 Swiss Grand Prix, which was Keke Rosberg's first and only win of the season on his way to becoming world champion. And the race took place at our favorite Dijon-Prenois. Now, sir, we move on to cash and carry situation. It will be interesting to see how the F1 money masters Liberty Media will handle this situation. No races mean no sanctioning fee, and even more important, no TV revenue, which is their main source of moolah. 2 races on one weekend may be the solution. Perhaps they stage the Spanish Grand Prix at Sochi and Bahrain Grand Prix in Baku. F1 history tells us once upon a time, as we just mentioned, Swiss Grand Prix took place in France, and the Luxembourg Grand Prix used to be held in Germany. You remember those wonderful days, right?
Those are my favorites.
When the Red Baron was flying very, very high. Ross Brawn has indicated they may do a 2-day Grand Prix weekend, which I think is a good idea, and cancel the August summer break, which is an even better idea, to accommodate as many races as possible this year. Now, this is just my personal opinion. I will not be surprised if one of the races that are cancelled do not reappear on the schedule in 2021. Good opportunity for Roger Penske to call Chase Carey and let him know he has a brickyard where they can race in September, as they have done not too long ago. And actually, Roger Penske in an interview mentioned that his son Greg has already held, initial discussion with Chase Carey. But the race, according to Roger, is not going to come to Indy before 2022. But I would love to see Formula One cars back home again in Indiana. What say you?
I would love that. Very organized, great facility, bathrooms everywhere. You could never be without a bathroom. And the Bloody Marys are outstanding.
And the museum is absolutely incredible. Now we come to the most important person in Formula One. Claire is Claire. Nice to know Eau Claire has her priorities in order in these times. Asked what the race cancellation means, this is what she said, and I quote, "It would mean less money for us. We need to check with Formula One management about the insurance for cancelled races." End of quote. So I wonder if Formula One has insurance through Allstate, which would mean Claire will be in good hands. What do you think?
I think they have AAA.
AAA? At least she can get her battery jump start free of charge. That's nice to know.
And roadside service.
There you go. Yeah, which the Williams team may need quite a bit. Okay, regime change. Just the thought I had. Because right now we don't know when the season will start, but hopefully it will start sometime before December 31st. I was thinking if the season is cut in half or something like that, it could be the best opportunity for Max or Bottas to end the LCH reign. If they can get some early and lucky wins, it will leave Lewis less races to fight back, because this is the same guy who overcame a 43-point deficit to lead the championship over Nico not too long ago, till there was a done blowed up in Malaysia. This is what I call the Rosberg rule. Any chance you think anybody can topple Lewis if it's a short season?
I don't know. I don't want to make any kind of prediction.
Well, that's the first.
Thank you.
Now we come to Bernie and his beans. Speaking from his coffee plantation in Brazil, the Big E said, and I quote, "The problem was that they didn't do anything for too long. It's always down to the one who officially cancelled it in the end. Whoever it is has to take responsibility also financially. Apparently nobody wanted to do that." End of quote. I would like to say this to Bernard. Bon dia, amigo. Do you remember how long it took to make a decision at the 2005 United States Grand Prix, baby? Your thoughts on Bernie's muttering, sir?
Well, Bernie, he has nothing else to do, and I sort of agree with a lot of what he's babbling about. You have to admit he knows what's going on deep down in the bowels. So I respect his funny little comments, but we do need something. I mean, we have no racing. Everybody's postponed, even NASCAR.
Well, Buddha bless Chad Hurley for creating YouTube. I'm loving it. I've been watching all sorts of motorsports and documentaries and this and that. So I'm not missing anything. I would love to have Formula One on, but we have to deal with reality and find something that will keep us busy. So I recommend anybody who's missing motorsports very much, check out YouTube. You can punch in 1934 German Grand Prix, 1957 French Grand Prix, 1981 Argentine Grand Prix. There are lots of documentaries about Colin Chapman, lots of interviews. Almost everybody these days have a, video podcast. So there are quite a few stuff there. You always learn new things when you step out of the box, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, Nas. Keep up the good work. So, why don't we take a quick break, and we'll be back with Jack and Motorsports Mondial after this brief message.
This F1 Weekly Podcast is brought to you by Speed Gear Authentic Racewear. Speed Gear is the best selection from the top teams and drivers in Formula One. Hats, shirts, sunglasses, diecast, and much more. Look to Speed Gear for your favorite team and driver apparel and collectibles. Speed Gear Authentic Racewear. Just click on the icon on our homepage. You know you'll want to.
Thank you, Speed Gear. Thank you, Steven. Keep up the good work.
Welcome back to F1weekly.com. Clark Rogers here, your host. And now, as we spin the globe and go around the world with Motorsports Mondial and the king, the Swami himself, Nasser Hamid.
Thank you, sir, and it's back to you for the Blackjack interview, please.
Thank you, sir. Well, it was me. It was Nasser Hamid. It was August 2006. We were young. We were innocent. F1 Weekly was just a little over a year old, and we were trolling Laguna Seca for interviews, and we bump into Jack Brabham. Take it away, Jack.
Motorsports Mondial with Nasser Hamid. Nasser, how are you tonight?
I'm doing very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. We had a great weekend last weekend at the Monterey Historical Races. We talked to some fantastic people. We'll quickly just say a couple of words about your experience at the Historicals.
Well, I've been to this event many times, and this certainly was the very best. To see these Cooper cars that basically not only changed the face of Grand Prix motor racing, but also overall racing. Rear engines, when they came here, they were big news, and everything now is rear engine. And to see these cars run around, and then to meet the man who was really the man behind these things, Jack Brabham, to talk to him, it was just a fascinating experience. And when I started following Formula One 1973, he was already retired 3 years. And just to be able to talk to him, and it's just an incredible feeling. Very privileged to go and talk to these people. And, we met Juan Manuel Fangio II also, whom I've known for many years because he raced here at Dan Bierny's team. So it was very good. Great trip. How about you?
Oh, I had a wonderful experience, and it was a pleasure sharing it with you, Nasser, talking to some of the drivers, such as the driver of the TF-106, who was there mostly for a PR engagement, but Ricardo Zonta, a very nice gentleman, and talking to some other people like François Castaigne. It was a thrill for me because I'm a big Gordini fan. Some of my dream cars have Gordini written on the side, so to talk to François was just a thrill that just was the pinnacle of my weekend. So I was very, very happy. But anyway, let's go ahead and do Motorsports Mondial.
Yeah, just one thing on François Castaigne. We talk a lot about that dynamic duel 1979. Villeneuve and Pironi.
Yes.
Here is the guy who designed the engine. He was the man who was in charge of all that operation. Much. It was certainly.
We were kids in a candy store.
Absolutely.
So there you have it. We'll have a little bit more on all these interviews because they were outstanding in future programs, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more on this show.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned for an interview with Jack Brabham. He won his first Grand Prix in 1959 and his last Grand Prix in 1970 with 3 World Championships sandwiched right between them. Stay tuned for Jack Brabham.
Welcome to F1 Weekly, Jack. First of all, how are you today?
Just fantastic being here at Laguna Seca today and seeing all these marvelous cars.
There are some great Coopers here today. Now, you were instrumental in the development of the rear-engine Cooper, and also, obviously, the Brabham, which you had so much success in your own car. With those two successes, what was more gratifying in your lifetime?
Yeah, well, actually, the rear-engine motor car, of course, was developed by Cooper, really, and myself. And that was fantastic to come here and see so many of them here this weekend. I don't know where they all come from, but there's dozens of them here, and they all look as good as the day they were built.
That's great. Are you enjoying yourself when you see all these Coopers? What kind of memories come back?
Yeah, always have a fantastic time when we come here, and last time I was here, I actually done a bit of driving as well, and this time, of course, it's just marvelous to see all the Cooper cars.
Now, with all the drivers that you raced against during your era, which driver really stands out that gave you the most competition?
Yeah, say again.
All the drivers that you raced against during your wonderful career, your world championships, which driver stands out the best in terms of that particular era?
Yeah, actually, it was a wonderful era, really, and I was lucky enough to win the championship 3 times and once in my own car. That was a great thrill, of course, and look back at it was a wonderful era. It's what we call the golden days of motor racing.
Absolutely. Who was your favorite driver other than yourself?
Yeah, fantastic. It really was fantastic.
That's great.
And what was your most memorable victory, a Grand Prix win that you remember most?
Your most memorable victory?
I think the one I enjoyed most was in 1960 at Reims, when they all told me that there was no way I was going to win that race because it was a Ferrari circuit, and we downed the Ferrari works team. And I won that race, and I won 300 bottles of champagne as well.
Amongst all the racetracks, which is your favorite European racetrack?
Well, I think the most difficult and most enjoyable one, really, was the Nürburgring. That was a fantastic circuit, really. It took a long time to learn it, and it was 14 miles round, 1 lap, 186 bends, and it took a lot of learning. But once you got to it, it was a fantastic circuit to race on.
Now, your sons were racing, and Jeff was very successful here in America. Are any grandsons coming in racing that we can look forward to the Brabham name?
Do say that again?
Any grandsons that might go into racing with the same success your children had in racing?
A grandson?
Yes. You have any grandchildren?
Yeah, I have a grandson racing.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
What's his name?
Yeah, I have a grandson racing, yes. You'll see him over here eventually.
What's his name, please?
He's only 12.
Oh, good.
He's been racing 3 years.
Good.
He's already got a state championship. Okay. And going very well.
What's his name?
Matthew.
Matthew Brabham.
Yeah, Matthew Brabham. He's Jeffrey's son.
Yeah. Jeff is very popular here. He was very successful in GTP racing.
Yeah, Jeffrey used to race here a lot, yeah.
Is he doing any racing himself in Australia these days?
Is Jeff doing any racing right now?
Jeffrey, he lives in Australia near me, not far apart, and he works for BMW out there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think of your mate Mark Webber in Formula One these days?
Mark Webber. Any opinions on Mark Webber in Formula One?
Yeah, I think probably winning the World Championship in 1966 in my own car with an Australian engine.
Brabham, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. One more question. Who do you think's going to win the World Championship this year?
Who would you like to see win?
Well, I'd like to see Schumacher win it again, actually, because he's getting back up there, you know. He's that far, yeah. He's getting close.
Yeah,
he is close.
Yeah, I don't think he'll make it. May not be enough races.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good luck.
Good. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jack Brabham, for talking to F1weekly.com.
Jack, thanks again for joining F1weekly.com. Nas, any thoughts on that?
Yes, sir. Like I said, it was a great, great day in my life. Really, I was very happy, still am, that I got a chance to meet such a great legend of motor racing. The man won a world championship before you and I were born, and to shake his hands and have a chat with him, it was just a very special feeling, moment, and my thanks to F1 Weekly for making it possible.
Bravo, prego.
Okay, sir, now we move from California, where this interview took place, south of the border, jumping over the wall, to the WRC Rally Mexico. Your homeboy, Sebastian Ogier, won the rally for the 6th time, and this time he was driving a Toyota. Ott Tänak from Estonia was second in his Hyundai, and Timo Suninen was third in his Ford Fiesta. So you can have a Fiesta in Mexico and still be very competitive in a Ford Fiesta. That's an original. Ogier leads the championship over UK's Elfyn Evans, who was fourth in Mexico in his Toyota. And sir, you mentioned that Sebring, Workaround, and the IMSA Sports Car Series, everything is cancelled, and of course IndyCars have cancelled the first 4 races. And according to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Big Kahuna in late May is still on, but time will tell if the Indy 500 will also fall victim to the corona fever. I hope not, but you never know. And the Circuit of the Americas has been shut down, and hopefully they will be in operation when the Formula One circuit comes to town later in the year. Now some interesting news. Igor Fraga, a young man from Sao Paulo, has been welcomed into the slippery arms of Dr. Marco as a Red Bull Junior. He won the recent Toyota Racing Series by beating Red Bull star Liam Lawson. Fraga will be joining fellow Brazilians Sergio Sete Camara, Estonian Yuri Whips, Indian Jahan Daruwala, Japanese Yuki Tsunoda, Aussie made Jack Doohan, Mick Doohan's son, and Norwegian Dennis Hogger in the Junior Piranha pool. So Dr. Marco has gone all over the world to collect this pool. We'll see how it goes. Once all these series starts, F1, F2, F3, we shall be reporting on all the series. So this was an interesting item I read. Pirelli has been forced to scrap 1,800 of its Formula One tires after the cancellation of the Australian Grand Prix without a single lap being run. They will now be used as fuel for a cement factory in England. Pirelli has to write off tires that have been mounted but not used because of possible damage when they are taken off the rims, and because of that, for safety consideration, they don't want to use the same tires again. So that I did not know. Okay, sir, now we come to Shondell's segment. Money. Proving cash is king, we will now have Aramco on the grid. Fresh from their IPO and meltdown in the oil market, Saudi Arabian oil giant Aramco has signed on as an F1 partner, kind of like Heineken and Rolex. I have a gushing feeling that Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is in the pipeline, and Louis of Arabia can't wait for that. Talking of oil in Arabia, and there's no shortage of that in that part of the world, once upon a time I was reading a book on Paul Getty, and it says back in the 1920s or thereabouts, he drove his Cadillac from Paris to Saudi Arabia in search of oil. That's called dedication to your trade. The man was based in England at the time of his death, and believe it or not, in his palatial mansion had a payphone in case any guest had to make a phone call. So that was interesting. Finally, sir, this is of interest to you, should be. Finally, famous last words, Webber on the mark. Speaking at the Australian Grand Prix weekend, or whatever that was, he said about your favorite driver, Lewis Carl Hamilton, and I quote, "On the track he is like Nadal and Federer-esque. He just executes, and he does it in a way that is very, very clinical." End of quote. Mark went on to say he is more complete than Michael Schumacher, citing winning championships without crashing into challengers. I think Lewis is also pretty good in parking his Mercedes around the tight streets of Monte Carlo. With that zinger of the day, I will get out of the way. Thank you for listening, folks.
Wow. Parking? Wow. We're going way back.
Well, he has to show Justin Bieber, Saint Devote and the tunnel and the tip-top bar.
I understand. The Beeb needs all that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we're in trouble, aren't we, Nasser?
No, sir, we are not in trouble. We are positive people. We're going to move forward, and we're going to have a podcast every week. That's the spirit.
That's the spirit, Nas. Keep up the good work. Yeah, I mean, we'll come up with something. Like I said, it's batting down the hatchets over here at the Palatial Studios. Luckily, we have YouTube, like you said, and lots of hot dogs in the refrigerator.
Yes, sir. And don't forget the PBR.
The PBR is fresh and ready to go, Nas. So I want to tell all the listeners out there, hang in there. We're going to beat this thing, COVID-19, coronavirus. It'll be over in a couple months, and we'll probably be watching the Dutch Grand Prix, or we'll be somewhere in Baku.
Yeah, I have a feeling that actually I was reading a statement from Jan Lammers, who is the boss man of the Dutch Grand Prix, that he is waiting to hear from FIA and whoever the powers are apart from them. But I think it earliest we will see would be Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Okay. Well, on that note, Nas, I'll talk to you next week. I want to thank everybody who listens. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.